In June of 2017, 22-year-old Amanda Wood went on a solo hike in the Colorado mountains and disappeared without a trace. Only 2 months later, a random photo taken outside a remote motel revealed the horrifying truth. In the background of the photo was Amanda, blindfolded and with her hands tied behind her back. You will find out who was behind her disappearance and what secret room 204 was hiding in this video. The events in this story are presented as a narrative interpretation. Some elements have been altered or recreated for storytelling purposes. On June 15, 2017, at 8 o'clock in the morning, 22-year-old Amanda Wood closed the door of her small home in Boulder, Colorado. The weather that day was perfect for starting a long solo hike. The temperature was 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sky over the Rocky Mountains remained crystal clear with no hint of a thunderstorm. Amanda, a final-year journalism student, was known among her friends for her passion for solo travel, which she called digital detox sessions. Her classmates later told police that she deliberately turned off her cell phone as soon as her sneakers touched the first miles of the mountain trail, seeking complete isolation from social media and the incessant flow of news. Her goal was the Conundrum Creek Trail, known not only for its picturesque hot springs, but also for its treacherous elevation changes, where the trail could climb thousands of feet in a few miles. The girl's mother, Ellen Wood, in her first official statement to a Pitkin County Sheriff's Office detective, recalled that Amanda was in an unusually high spirits that morning. She took special care to check her gear, methodically packing a gas burner, 3 days' worth of dry food, and a warm sleeping bag designed for the harsh nighttime temperatures of the high country. Before she left, Amanda left a small piece of paper on the refrigerator door as part of her usual safety ritual. In the note, she clearly indicated her route and the deadline for returning home. Sunday evening, June 18th, no later than 20 o'clock. However, when the sun set behind the sharp peaks of the ridges on Sunday and the driveway outside the house remained empty, the anxiety in her mother's heart began to turn into panic. All evening, Ellen and the girl's father, Robert, tried to call their daughter, but the operator's mechanical voice only repeated that the caller was out of range. At 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday, June 19th, Robert Wood was standing on the doorstep of the sheriff's office. The official search and rescue operation was launched immediately, and 72 hours later, it became one of the largest in this region of Colorado in the last 10 years. Mountain mornings in June greeted the volunteers with a thick, almost tangible smell of pine needles and damp earth. The rocky serpentines remained covered with a slippery film of nighttime dew, making every step the rescuers took dangerous. More than 50 professional specialists combed every mile of the trail, descended on ropes into deep crevasses, and explored the banks of the raging Conundrum stream. The sound of the water in this place was so powerful that, according to one of the volunteers, it could instantly swallow up any sound, even a desperate cry for help. The girl's father categorically refused to stay in the command center. Every day he personally went around the trailhead, where Amanda's dusty car was still parked, a silver sedan that now seemed to be a mute and gloomy witness to her disappearance. Robert stopped every tourist whose face was tanned from the mountain sun, showing them the last photo of his daughter, taken a week before she left. He would ask about any suspicious details, unusual people on the route, abandoned items, or strange noises at night. The psychological state of the family, as noted by the liaison officers, deteriorated with each sunset when the temperature in the mountains dropped to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Every hour without news seemed like endless torture to the parents. The investigative team, after analyzing the complete absence of signs of a struggle, scattered belongings, or traces of blood along the entire accessible route, came up with a basic working theory: an accident. The detectives assumed that on one of the snow-covered sections of the ridge, where the ice was several feet thick even in mid-June, Amanda could have stumbled and lost her balance, falling into one of the hidden deep crevasses where her body could have been instantly covered by rocks, or a heavy layer of wet snow explained why search helicopters with state-of-the-art thermal imagers did not pick up any signals. Amanda's picture with her bright smile appeared on every bulletin board and gas station within 100 miles, but the mountains remained silent. A symbolic point in the search was the turnoff at the so-called Rotten Oak, a lone dead tree at 9,000 feet, where hikers usually made their last stop before heading to the springs. Rescuers found only emptiness there. The absence of any material traces, not even an energy bar wrapper or a clear shoe print, created an eerie feeling that the 22-year-old had simply vanished into the thin air of Colorado, leaving behind nothing but oppressive silence and fear in the hearts of her loved ones. The investigation effectively reached a dead end on the 5th day, when the last hope of finding a living person in the open began to fade with the June heat. On August 23, 2017, when the official search teams in the Colorado mountains had already begun to wind down their activities, considering the case of Amanda Wood a hopeless accident, the investigation received the most important piece of evidence from a completely random source. 23-year-old Caleb Evans, a mechanic and avid traveler from Denver, was making a long trip on his heavy motorcycle in the southern part of the state. At around 22 hours and 30 minutes, due to increasing gusty winds and a sharp drop in temperature to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, Caleb realized he could not safely continue on his journey. He decided to stop at a roadside motel called the Mountain Serenity, located 140 miles south of the Conundrum Creek area where Amanda was last seen. The place looked like a typical truck stop for tired truckers. Cracked asphalt parking lot, sparse tumbleweed bushes at the entrance, and a huge neon sign that emitted a distinctive electrical crackle every second. The red light of the sign pulsed, snatching the silhouettes of rare cars from the darkness. Caleb later told the detectives that the parking lot was almost empty, except for an old pickup truck and a silver sedan parked in the very corner where the neon light barely scattered the thick shadows. Before going inside, the young man decided to capture his newly painted motorcycle on camera, as the lighting from the sign created an interesting visual effect on the chrome parts of the bike. Using his tablet with a high-resolution camera, he took exactly 10 pictures from different angles. After checking into room 204, which greeted him with the smell of old tobacco and yellowed wallpaper, Caleb felt a strange uneasiness that he called an ear-pressing silence. Lying on the bed, he began to review the footage he had taken. On the 8th image, a strange spot of light in the background, right next to the same silver car in the corner of the parking lot, caught his attention. When he zoomed in on the image as much as possible, his initial curiosity turned to icy horror. The camera lens captured what the human eye could have missed in the darkness. The trunk of the silver car was open, and a young woman was standing next to it. Her light jacket was clearly visible, but the details were striking in their brutality. The girl's eyes were tightly wrapped in a wide strip of dark cloth that covered almost half of her face. In his testimony, Caleb emphasized that the woman's head was unnaturally tilted, as if she was in a state of severe shock or under the influence of medication. Directly behind her stood a tall man in a massive dark hooded jacket that completely hid his face. His black-gloved hand was holding the woman's shoulder tightly, effectively pushing her toward another car that was parked parallel to her with its lights off. Evans recalled that what he saw on the screen made him break out in a cold sweat. He immediately went to the window of his room and pulled back the heavy curtain, hoping to see the license plates, but the parking lot was already completely empty. Only the dust kicked up by the wheels was slowly settling on the asphalt under the flickering neon, and there was a faint smell of burnt rubber and exhaust in the air. The witness claimed that the entire scene in the photo looked methodical and fast, as if the people in the picture knew exactly how much time they had before bystanders showed up. Caleb spent the rest of the night sitting on a chair in front of the door, blocking it with his travel bag. He thought that every rustle behind the wall or the sound of footsteps in the motel corridor belonged to the hooded man. At 6 o'clock in the morning on August 24, Caleb Evans was already at the local police station. The detectives, who initially took his story about the kidnapped girl in the photo as a result of the traveler's fatigue, changed their tone as soon as they saw the picture on the tablet screen. The quality of the photo made it possible to clearly distinguish the texture of the fabric on the victim's eyes and the characteristic contours of the silver sedan's body. Metadata analysis by the technical department over the next 2 hours confirmed that the file had been created at 22 hours 38 minutes the previous evening and had not been digitally altered or edited. It was the first indisputable proof that Amanda Wood hadn't died in an accident in the mountains, but had been kidnapped and transported hundreds of miles from the place of her disappearance. The Mountain Serenity Motel instantly became the epicenter of the investigation. Police experts arrived at the scene at 8:25 minutes, cordoning off the parking lot with yellow tape. Every square inch of asphalt under the neon sign was subjected to a thorough inspection using ultraviolet lamps and reagents. Investigators realized that this random photo of Caleb Evans was the only link that connected the quiet forests of Colorado to the grim reality of an organized kidnapping. The crackling motel sign now seemed to the detectives not just an element of roadside service, but a silent witness that highlighted the crime at the most opportune moment. The psychological tension in the investigation team increased because now they knew. Amanda was alive at least 2 months after she disappeared, but she was in the hands of people who acted with professional cool and caution, moving their victim under the cover of night between remote locations in the state. It was this moment in a parking lot under a red light that became the point of no return for the entire case, turning the search for the body into a full-fledged hunt for the kidnappers. On August 24, 2017, at 6:15 in the morning, Caleb Evans officially handed over his tablet for inspection to the police officer on duty. The first reaction of law enforcement officers was marked by deep skepticism, as the case of Amanda Wood had been considered a tragic but accidental death in the high country for 2 months, and the photo from the remote motel looked too random to suggest a possible staging. However, after the device was transferred to the digital forensics department, the situation changed dramatically. The technical expert conducted a detailed analysis of the metadata of the 8th image, confirming with the help of satellite coordinates that the file was created in the parking lot of the Gorny Poshtov Motel, and the pixel structure of the image did not contain any signs of editing, or overlaying of digital layers. The official conclusion of the technical examination stated that the photo was absolutely authentic and should be included in the case file as direct evidence of a serious crime. 3 days later, on August 27th, a group of detectives and a team of forensic scientists arrived at a motel hundreds of miles away from Amanda's original route. The motel's administrator, Martha Hill, during a formal interrogation, the minutes of which later became part of the trial, recalled that around the time the photo was taken, a man stayed in room 204, whose behavior seemed extremely withdrawn. According to her testimony, he was a tall man with an athletic build who kept a dark cap pulled over his eyes and tried to minimize any visual contact with the staff. He insisted on paying cash in the amount of $75 for each night and refused to provide any identification documents, explaining that he had recently lost his wallet at a gas station. Martha noted that she had never seen the woman next to him in the corridors, but she clearly remembered the muffled sounds of the television, which was on in the room 204 24 hours a day, as if deliberately creating a noise curtain to hide what was going on inside. A thorough inspection of the room itself began at 9 o'clock in the morning. Room 204 greeted the investigators with a sterile but depressing atmosphere. Standard cheap furniture, worn carpets, and a complete absence of any personal belongings of the previous occupant. The forensic scientists worked methodically, using magnetic powders to search for fingerprints on metal surfaces and powerful ultraviolet radiation sources to detect biological traces. During the first 6 hours of the examination, the results were disappointing, as the surfaces had been thoroughly cleaned using strong chlorinated agents, indicating that evidence had been deliberately and professionally destroyed. However, at 15 hours and 20 minutes, one of the detectives, while examining the corner behind the heavy wooden bed, noticed that the edge of the plastic skirting board was slightly off the wall. Illuminating the gap with the narrow beam of his flashlight, he found a small, shiny object. Using sterile tweezers, he pulled out a small silver token pendant with a subtle engraving from the dust. When a digital copy of the find was sent to the Wood family, Amanda's mother, Ellen, instantly recognized the item without holding back her emotions. According to her, her daughter never took off this jewelry, considering it her talisman, which she always wore on a thin silver chain. This discovery was a turning point in the entire investigation, as it not only factually confirmed Amanda's stay within the walls of this particular motel, but also finally shattered the initial version of her accident in the mountains. The detectives now had a clear point of reference: a license plate number 204, a silver car, and an unknown man who acted with pathological caution but made one fatal mistake, failing to notice the victim's badge slipping under the baseboard during the alleged forceful movement. The official status of the case was immediately changed to kidnapping and illegal imprisonment by prior conspiracy. From that moment on, every detail from Caleb Evans' random footage began to become hard facts, and the investigation gained legal grounds to engage federal resources and intercept all vehicles that matched the description. The silver pendant found in a dirty corner of the motel became a symbol of hope for the parents, and at the same time, the main evidence that the hunt for the kidnappers was now nationwide. Every minute counted now, because the criminals, sensing danger, could change their location at any moment, disappearing back into the endless roads of Colorado. Before we move on to the next stage of the investigation, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and like this video. This is extremely important for content promotion, as YouTube's algorithms take into account your activity, helping videos get recommended to more people, allowing me to continue to create such detailed investigations for you. On August 28, 2017, at 10 o'clock in the morning, a team of Colorado State University technical experts completed an in-depth analysis of a digital image taken by Caleb Evans in a motel parking lot. Using image enhancement and stabilization software, the forensic team was able to identify the make and model of the car in the background, a silver Honda Accord sedan from the early 2000s. Despite the nighttime shooting time and the grainy image, the experts identified two unique technical features: a small horizontal dent on the left rear fender and the absence of the original plastic cap on the right front wheel. These details were crucial for a search of the state's DMV database. After 8 hours of continuously checking the registers, investigators received a specific name. The vehicle's owner was 24-year-old Clyde Butler, who lived in a Denver suburb and worked as a senior mechanic at a large chain auto repair shop called Prime Motors. On August 30th, at 13 hours 45 minutes, a task force consisting of 4 detectives and 2 patrol officers arrived at Butler's place of employment. The owner of the service, Thomas Reed, later testified that the police visit came as a complete surprise to the staff. He recalled that Clyde was working on a complicated truck engine repair that day. When the officers entered the box, Butler was under the hood of the truck, and his hands were covered in grease and black waste oil up to his elbows. The detention was quick. As soon as the metal handcuffs were fastened on the mechanic's wrists, he did not resist, but looked completely stunned. During his initial interrogation at the sheriff's office, which began at 16 o'clock that afternoon, Butler categorically denied any involvement in Amanda Wood's disappearance. Detective Stevens, who conducted the interview, noted in the report that the suspect was nervous, constantly wiping his sweaty palms on his work jeans and avoiding direct eye contact. Clyde claimed that he had never heard the name of the missing girl and had never visited the Mountain Serenity Motel, located 140 miles from his usual route. In parallel with the interrogation, the forensic laboratory began to examine the seized car, which was found in the parking lot of the car service center. The car looked unusually clean for a mechanic's vehicle. The interior upholstery had recently been treated with a powerful chemical cleaner that left behind a pungent, intrusive odor of artificial lemon. Detectives suggested that such a thorough cleaning could have been an attempt to destroy biological traces. However, during the dismantling of the rear seat, one of the experts noticed a small symbolic piece stuck between the metal fasteners and the carpeting. It was a fragment of bright blue thread, about 2 inches long, which was identical in composition and color to the material of the hiking backpack Amanda had used on her last hike. This discovery was the first material evidence linking Butler's car to the victim. When asked directly about how his car could have appeared in the witness's photo on the night of August 23, Butler began to give confusing explanations. He told the investigators that his car was often left open near the car service bays with the keys in the ignition, and it could have been used by any of his colleagues or bystanders during the night shift. However, none of the employees of Prime Motors in private conversations with the police confirmed this version, noting that Clyde was always very jealous of his property and did not allow anyone to drive his sedan. Investigators documented every contradiction in his testimony, realizing that the mechanic was either trying to hide his own guilt or was acting under strong pressure from third parties. The investigation actually turned the silver Honda into the main prosecution witness, methodically examining every inch of the body under high-powered lights. The police launched a full review of all of Butler's phone calls over the past 3 months, looking for clues that could explain how an ordinary student from Boulder could end up in the trunk of a Denver mechanic's car. Clyde Butler remained in custody, and detectives continued to unravel the thread that led from a random shot under a motel neon to the grim reality of the kidnapping. Using modern forensic techniques, it was determined that the car had been driven more than 800 miles within a week of the girl's disappearance, which completely contradicted Butler's claim that he had stayed exclusively within Denver. Ahead was a lengthy process of comparing phone logs and CCTV footage from all gas stations heading south, where each frame could be the final confirmation of the crime. Amanda Wood's case moved into the phase of active prosecution, where the silver lining became the basis for the subsequent search for all those involved in this brutal story. The search continued, and now the detectives had not just a ghost, but a real trace in the form of metal, grease, and one small blue thread that became a mute witness to Amanda's stay in this closed space. On September 1st, 2017, at 9 o'clock in the morning, a group of detectives completed a cross-check of the electronic timesheets of the Prime Motors car service. The findings, supported by the testimony of 6 of Clyde Butler's co-workers, confirmed his absolute alibi. On the critical dates in June and August, he was not only at his workplace in Denver, but also took on additional night shifts. This forced the investigation to radically reconsider Butler's role in the case and focus on his version of the transfer of ownership of the silver sedan. During additional interrogation, Clyde said that 3 months before Amanda's abduction, he had put the car up for sale through a free online ad. According to him, the transaction took place in a parking lot near the number 40 freeway. The buyers were a young couple who had come to the meeting by taxi. Butler recalled in his official testimony that the man and woman looked extremely rushed but friendly. They paid $3,500 in cash, explaining that they did not want to waste time on bank transfers. What's more, they convinced Clyde not to formalize the paperwork that day, promising to stop by the DMV themselves within a week. Butler, having received the full amount in hand, agreed, which ultimately left the car registered to the previous owner, despite the actual loss of control over it. The investigation received detailed descriptions of the 2 men from the mechanic, which became the basis for the sketches. The man was described as tall, athletic, approximately 24 years old, with short dark hair. The woman, who appeared to be about 23 years old, had long blonde hair and one specific detail that Butler noticed when she picked up her keys. She had a large tattoo on her forearm in the form of a stylized black sun with sharp rays. This tattoo became the symbolic detail that later allowed the suspect to be identified in databases. On September 2nd at 13 o'clock, detectives began a large-scale review of surveillance footage from gas stations and shopping centers within a 10-mile radius of the alleged car sale. A dilapidated phone booth near the highway, from which Butler's phone logs indicated that one of the final calls from the buyers was made, became a symbolic point in this part of the investigation. Traffic and billing analysis revealed a cell phone number that was used exclusively for this transaction and activated the day before. At the same time, forensic experts worked with the National Crime Database, comparing the description of the tattoo and appearance with the archives of arrests over the past 5 years. On September 4th, at 18 hours 45 minutes, the system produced a match. A person with a similar tattoo and characteristics was involved in a disorderly conduct case in another state. This allowed law enforcement to get the first real names: 24-year-old Derek Turner and 23-year-old Cecilia Green. Further checks of their activity showed that a week before Amanda's abduction, they had completely stopped all social media activity and withdrawn all funds from their bank cards. Working with the databases and comparing the obtained characteristics with the archives of offenses allowed us to narrow the circle of suspects to these two specific individuals. The investigation revealed that the couple could have used forged documents to rent housing in remote areas. Using a license plate recognition system on major highways, police spotted a silver Honda 300 miles west of Denver, heading toward national forests. Based on this data, covert surveillance was deployed, and the suspect's coordinates became the #1 priority for all units in the state. The locations of Turner and Green were actively tracked through radio intercepts and visual monitoring of remote roadways, preparing the ground for further procedural steps. The case entered the phase of round-the-clock monitoring, where every second was an approach to the denouement, and the kidnappers' faces finally ceased to be nameless shadows in a random photo. The police acted with the utmost caution so as not to spook the criminals, who apparently had a clear plan to hide in an isolated area. The tension in the investigation headquarters reached its peak when the latest geolocation data pointed to a specific square of forest. The process of identification was complete, and now every link in the chain of evidence led to the final point of this gloomy route. On September 6, 2017, at 4:30 in the morning, a special task force with the support of federal agents began the final stage of the operation to capture the suspects. The location was an isolated 2-story gray cedar house located at the end of an abandoned forest road 8 miles from the western boundary of the Uncompahgre National Forest. The building was almost invisible from the air due to the dense pine trees and the artificial camouflage of the walls with dark mesh. According to the report of Task Force Officer Marcus Reed, the assault began simultaneously from 3 points: the front door, the back door, and the second-floor windows. Derek Turner and Cecilia Green were detained directly in the bedroom. They did not have time to offer armed resistance, although law enforcement officers found a loaded carbine and several packs of ammunition near the bed. After the suspects were detained, experts began a thorough search of the premises in search of hidden passages. At 5:20 minutes in the morning, one of the operatives noticed that a heavy metal stele with tools in the garage was fixed on moving hinges. Behind it was a massive wooden door leading to a basement that was not marked on any architectural plan of the house. The descent into the basement was accompanied by a pungent odor of moisture, antiseptic, and cheap soap. The room, about 120 square feet, was completely sealed with soundproof panels attached to the concrete walls. In the far corner, on a low metal frame with a thin mattress, law enforcement officers found Amanda Wood. The girl was alive, but in a state of deep psychological shock and extreme physical exhaustion. The temperature in the basement was 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and the only source of light was a dim lamp protected by a metal mesh. The medical sergeant who first examined the victim noted in his report that Amanda appeared disoriented and did not initially realize she was being rescued, trying to shield her face with her hands from the bright lights. Her skin was painfully pale due to the complete lack of sunlight for 79 days, and her weight was estimated to be 22 pounds less than the amount on her driver's license. The girl's ankles bore distinctive dark marks and bruises from prolonged use of metal shackles, which at the time were attached by a long chain to a massive ring embedded directly in the concrete floor. Forensic investigators found numerous pieces of evidence of systematic restraint in the room: stocks of canned food, plastic containers of water, and an improvised diary in which Green kept a detailed schedule of her sleep and feeding. Investigators were particularly drawn to a silver pendant, identical to the one found under the motel's baseboard, which now lay on Turner's desk as a kind of trophy. All the basement windows were boarded up with plywood and covered with earth from the outside, creating the illusion of complete isolation from the outside world. At 6 o'clock, 40 minutes in the morning, Amanda Wood was taken on a stretcher to a medical evacuation helicopter for transportation to the nearest hospital in Grand Junction. At the same time, a team of forensic anthropologists began working at the scene to examine the soil around the house for other possible burials. A heavy iron bolt on the basement door, which, according to the detectives, separated the civilized world from the zone of complete lawlessness, became a symbolic place for this operation. The entire perimeter of the house was surrounded by yellow tape, and the same silver sedan was still parked in the driveway, which was the key to solving the disappearance. The process of documenting the crime scene took over 24 hours, as the volume of biological traces and fingerprints found required painstaking work. Turner and Green were taken to the county jail under high security conditions to avoid any contact with unauthorized persons until charges are formally filed. The rescue operation was successful, but the extent of the psychological and physical damage caused to the student was yet to be assessed by medical experts. The mountains of Colorado, which had been hiding the mystery of the disappearance for so long, finally gave up their last hiding place, leaving behind only an empty cage under the concrete floor of a gray house in the woods. The suspect's notes found at the scene indicated that the couple planned to keep the victim in this place indefinitely, constantly changing the methods of psychological pressure. Every item seized, from chains to diary entries, became part of the accusatory base, which became more and more indisputable with each hour of the search. The photo of Amanda that her father held in his hands every day at the trailhead could now finally be replaced by the real presence of his daughter, although the family had a long road of rehabilitation ahead of them. The house in the woods ceased to be a temporary shelter and became the main piece of evidence in a case that shocked even experienced state police officers with its brutality. An investigation at the scene of the raid officially confirmed that the criminals acted with pathological methodology, leaving the girl no chance of escape through a system of sophisticated locks and round-the-clock surveillance. The dark story of the solo hike, which had been interrupted in June, ended in the morning sun against the backdrop of the majestic, but now seemingly safer, peaks of Colorado. On September 10, 2017, at 9 o'clock in the morning, a series of formal interrogations began in the detention center, lasting 12 hours and 40 minutes, and revealing the true nature of Derek Turner and Cecilia Green's actions. During his conversations with the detectives, whose protocols later became key evidence in court, Turner behaved with clinical detachment, while Green described their methods with a chilling methodicity. According to their testimony, the initial stage of planning the crime did not have a specific victim in mind, but only a set of criteria by which they sought a person to isolate. They reported that monetary gain or sexual violence was never their priority. The only driving motive was the process of absolute domination over another person in the complete absence of the outside world. The selection of Amanda Wood as a kidnapping target occurred on June 14th, at the Mountain Horizon Outdoor Equipment Store in Boulder. Green recalled that they had been in the store for over 40 minutes, observing the customers, until they noticed a 22-year-old girl methodically checking the expiration date of a freeze-dried food kit for a long solo hike. She was buying a topographical map of the Conundrum area and a gas burner, which was a signal to the criminals that she was planning a long solo trip, where the absence of witnesses was guaranteed by the very nature of the route. Turner confirmed that this fact was decisive, as solo hikes in the mountains make it much more difficult to establish the exact time and place of a possible disappearance, giving the kidnappers a few days' advantage. The couple followed Amanda from the store to her home, and the next morning at 8:25, they were waiting at the beginning of the trailhead in a silver sedan. For 6 hours, they followed the girl at a safe distance, using professional binoculars to observe her movements on the rocky slopes. The kidnapping location was chosen on the most remote part of the route, 9 miles from the nearest parking lot, where dense coniferous forest and the sound of a mountain stream created a natural noise screen. According to Turner, they attacked the girl as she was taking a short break at the foot of a cliff. The attack was so quick and coordinated that Amanda did not have time to use the alarm whistle on the strap of her backpack. Green explained that they had prepared the area around the attack site in advance, disguising all signs of a struggle and carefully collecting small items that had fallen out of the victim's pockets so that rescuers would have no clues. The use of a silver car allowed them to quickly cover hundreds of miles, while the girl's parents were just beginning to feel the first alarm due to the lack of a call. Every detail of their testimony confirmed that the perpetrators acted not on impulse, but according to a clearly developed scenario, where every step Amanda took was calculated in advance. The symbolic place of this chapter was the equipment store, where a simple purchase of a map became a signing of a sentence for months of captivity for the girl. Investigators documented that the couple perceived their victim not as a person, but as a tool for realizing their own pathological fantasies of power. The interrogations also revealed that Turner and Green conducted regular training sessions on how to quickly tie up and move loads, preparing for the moment when they would meet what they considered to be the perfect victim. Police psychologists analyzing the video recordings of the interrogations noted a complete lack of remorse in both suspects. They spoke of their experiences with pride in their efficiency and invisibility. Every phrase in the protocol was evidence that Amanda Wood had fallen into the hands of people whose logic was devoid of any moral barriers and whose interest in the mechanics of control turned the basement into a laboratory of psychological torture. The stories of how they chose an escape route through the most abandoned dirt roads to avoid the video recording cameras only confirmed the high level of training. The case of Amanda Wood was revealed as an example of predators hunting for humans, where the safety of wildlife turned out to be an illusion, and the real danger came in the form of a couple in a silver sedan who methodically watched every step of the future captive. The detailed description of how they spent the first hours after the kidnapping, keeping the victim in a state of complete sensory deprivation, was the most grim part of their confessions. The detectives who conducted these interrogations later recalled that the calmness with which Green described the process of breaking the victim's will was the most chilling moment of their entire careers. The mechanics of the crime were brought to automaticity, and the motives, despite their illogic to the average person, were clearly structured in the minds of Turner and Green, making them one of the most dangerous criminals in the state's recent history. On December 14, 2017, absolute silence reigned in the Pitkin County courtroom, interrupted only by the monotone voice of Judge William Howard reading the final verdict. The courtroom was packed with journalists, relatives, and Boulder residents who had been following the case for 6 months. Derek Turner and Cecilia Green sat at the defense table with stony faces, showing no emotion, even as the prosecutor once again showed the same random motel photo on the big screen that had been the beginning of their downfall. On the basis of overwhelming evidence, including the results of molecular genetic examinations of skin fragments under the victim's fingernails and digital prints from Caleb Evans' tablet, the defendants were found guilty on all charges: kidnapping in the first degree and unlawful imprisonment committed by prior conspiracy by a group of persons with particular cruelty. The judge emphasized that Turner and Green's pathological desire for control and lack of any remorse made them dangerous to society beyond repair. The verdict was final: life imprisonment in a maximum security penitentiary without the possibility of early release. Amanda's father, Robert Wood, later recalled in a conversation with journalists that at that moment he did not feel relief, but only a heavy emptiness that finally allowed him to begin to mourn the time his daughter had spent in darkness. Amanda Wood herself was not present at the meeting on the recommendation of her doctors. Over the next 6 months, the girl underwent an intensive, regimented course of medical and psychological rehabilitation in a closed center in a Denver suburb. According to reports from medical staff, at first she refused to go out in the open sun and demanded that the TV be left on at full volume in her room to drown out her fear of the silence she associated with the basement. The recovery process was slow. Her physical injuries healed faster than the deep psychological scars left by her captor's methodical domination. The silver Honda Accord sedan, which became the main technical clue in the case, was transferred to a specialized site for disposal, according to a court order, where a press turned the car into a cube of metal, destroying the last physical space where Amanda was held captive. All other physical evidence, including the silver dog tag pendant, chains, and Cecilia Green's notes, were sealed and transferred to the State Police Archive for indefinite storage. The case was officially closed on December 31, 2017, due to the full execution of the sentence. Today, the Conundrum Creek Trail remains popular with hikers, but an additional information sign now stands near the trailhead with safety tips and mandatory registration for solo travelers. The symbolic place of this story is the very room 204 in the Mountain Serenity Motel, which the owners decided to completely redesign, trying to erase the memories of Turner and Green's presence there. However, for the Wood family, the story did not end with the court verdict. It continues every day in Amanda's every attempt to learn to trust people again and not flinch at the sound of footsteps behind her. The investigation showed that even in the most robust security systems, chance can play a decisive role, and one random photo of a motorcycle under a neon sign can be the line between eternal disappearance and returning home. Amanda Wood later changed her major at university to focus on helping victims of violent crime, trying to turn her pain into a tool of support for others. The photos of her solo hike, uploaded to cloud storage back in June, remain a digital reminder of how quickly a scenic route can turn into a trap. The Colorado mountains continue to tower over Boulder, keeping the city calm, but for those who know the story of number 204, they have forever changed their hue, reminding us that real darkness sometimes lies not in the forest, but in the minds of those who watch us from the shadows of a silver car. Every detail of this case, from the silver pendant under the baseboard to the iron chain in the basement, was documented and studied, becoming part of the textbooks for future detectives. The case of Amanda Wood went down in history as an example of an incredible will to live and a chance that defeated a carefully planned evil.